Distance can be a major barrier to accessing quality healthcare on time. That's where Angel Flight East comes in. Welcome to Takeoff Talk with Angel Flight East, a nonprofit dedicated to providing free flights for children and adults who need medical treatment far from home. We don't know how many people forego medical care because they don't have accessible transportation, and that's what this podcast is here to change. Join passionate AFE staff members Jess Ames and Maddie Beck as they share real-life stories from people who have used AFE services to get the care they need when they need it.
Hey, frequent flyers, welcome back with another episode of Takeoff Talk. You're here with me, Maddie.
And me, Jess.
And today we have a passenger named Erika. Hey, Erika.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Do you want to start out by telling our listeners a little bit about your situation and what led you to Angel Flight East?
Absolutely. So I started having a lot of really weird, random symptoms that didn't really make a lot of sense. So I was seeing my primary care doctor and just kind of constantly felt like I was complaining to him, like this weird, neck pain came out of nowhere. Then all of a sudden this weird shoulder pain came out of nowhere. And now I'm just like really, really tired. And why am I so tired? I go to bed early. And it just seemed like all these weird symptoms kept kind of adding up. And everyone was just kind of like, oh, I don't know. Like I had some spine surgery in the past. So I think they thought that it was just more like degenerative type things happening with like my neck and my shoulder. So it was kind of all right, we'll try some injections and see how that goes. And then one day at work, I all of a sudden just felt my heart racing, felt like I couldn't breathe. Luckily, I go to school, so I went right to my school nurse. She hooked me right up to all the monitors and was like, well, yeah, your heart rate's like sitting in the 130s. That's not good. You got to go. So I called my primary. I went right to him, sends me to the ER. They're like, yeah, something's going on. Like you're not in imminent danger. Like you're not having a heart attack, but for some reason you have this elevated heart rate. We don't know why. Follow up with cardiology. Okay. So there goes another weird random symptom that has no rhyme or reason. Cardiologist was great. She did every test under the sun, but unfortunately, still no answer. So it was left with, I think she called it inappropriate sinus tachycardia, which is meaning elevated heart rate for no reason. So it was just like, okay, continue to live on and do all of this stuff. And then my face started to go numb. My tongue started to go numb. My right side, arm, legs. I think when you start saying the word numb, people start kind of taking maybe a little bit more seriously or thinking more, okay, now there could be some neurological issue happening. So my primary, my doctors at Mainline Spine were like, we really think you should go to a neurologist and get, an MRI, make sure you don't have MS. So I'm like, okay, obviously, it takes months and months and months to get in to see a neurologist. So luckily my primary was like, don't worry, I'll order the MRI for you. And then if it shows anything, we'll just go ahead and send you on, to a neurologist. So I said, okay, get the MRI done. MRI comes back. And you know how nowadays with my chart, you get all your stuff before your doctor does. So there I am being like Dr. Google. And I'm like, okay, well, it does have a finding. I'm like, well, that's not, and it wasn't MS. So it's like, okay, well, what is this? And it wasn't called anything. It just said that your cerebral tonsils are 5 millimeters past the foramen magnum. And I'm like, okay, whatever that means. So I am Googling, what does this mean? And this is like a holiday weekend. So I am days and days away from even getting a phone call from somebody. So I Google and it's that first thing that pops up is a Chiari malformation type 1. So I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So again, I start researching and something I'd never heard of, but the more research I did, every single weird symptom I had was all a symptom of this Chiari malformation. So I continued to do my research. My doctor's office calls and they're like, oh, your MRI is clear. No issues. You're fine. I'm like, okay.
You're like, are you sure?
Yeah. I'm like, thanks for that. But I'm not sure I agree with you there. I'm like, did you see what this is? I said, the first thing I Google is this. And they're like, okay, well, yeah, go ahead, go see a neurologist. Well, the more and more research I did, they said, don't go to a neurologist. That neurologists basically know nothing about this condition. They usually are very dismissive of this condition and really are no help with this condition. So I joined all these Facebook groups and I really had to start advocating for myself and really had to start doing everything on my own and figuring out what this is. How do you treat it? What if it goes untreated? And then just more and more and more symptoms started to come out. Severe headaches, severe pain at the back of the head. My vision started to have issues. Like if I turned to the right or to the left, it would just be blurry. I couldn't focus in anymore. If I was looking at a computer and I looked away, it would all be blurry. Noise sensitivity, light sensitivity, like just these things just kept coming and coming and coming. And I'm like, there's got to be something more to this. This can't just be something that, oh, it's no big deal. Like you just live with it. It's okay. So again, I kept doing my own research and I was trying, I mean, I'm thinking we're in a suburb of Philadelphia. So I'm thinking Philadelphia has got to have some of the best neurosurgeons and hospitals and things. So I'm trying to find someone that specializes in Chiari, someone that knows what this condition is, knows how to treat this condition. So I find somebody at Jefferson and I think, okay, great, here we go. Like, we're going to get some answers. Go to Jefferson, I get no answers. I get no help. I get dismissed. So that was the start of feeling completely alone in this journey, completely frustrated, and not knowing if I was ever going to get any help, any relief, or get anybody to truly understand what I was actually feeling and going through on a daily basis. So he looked at my MRI and he was just like, well, yeah, like technically it's a Chiari, but it's only 5 millimeters. So it's not bad enough to be causing any of your symptoms. I'm like, none of my symptoms? He's like, no, go see a neurologist or go see if you have, like, I think it was like something, whatever.
Yeah, POTS.
Regulates, I forget.
But so wait, what kind of doctor was he then? If you weren't
a neurosurgeon.
Oh.
Yeah, so he was a neurosurgeon and you're thinking you're seeing someone that specializes in this. So I left there completely in tears, telling my husband, like I knew this was what was going to happen. I just felt like this is what was going to happen, that this is going to be a battle and that this is either I'm going to have to fight this battle hard or I'm going to just have to live with all of these symptoms and then live with them getting worse and worse and potentially losing my sight, potentially losing the ability to use my arms, my legs. You become paralyzed. So you just read all of these things now that happen to these people. I joined probably 5 different Facebook groups for Chiari, which was probably the best thing that I did with having something that's really not known. You tell somebody like, I've never heard of that. Well, no, neither have I until, I had to spend my whole life researching it. So while being on all these boards, you find out who these top doctors are. So there was like a doctor in Wisconsin, a doctor in New York City, and then a doctor at UPMC in Pittsburgh, Dr. Friedlander. And he was listed as one of like the best in the country. So I was like, okay, well, can I even get in to see the best in the country? Like, will I even be able to see this guy? So for a little while, I kind of just gave up for months and months. Like I initially found this out last July. I was like right at July 4th. And I gave up and I didn't reach out to Dr. Friedlander's office until January. And again, I figured this was going to be a long, long process. And I sent all my records in. The office was super easy to work with. They're like, yep, just, we'll request all of your MRIs. I sent them everything in, all of my reports. They got everything. I think within a couple of days, the office manager called and said, we're going to schedule you an appointment. And I got in, I think within 2 weeks of them calling, I was in seeing him. So I was like, okay, either that's really bad and he really saw something that's not good, or, I was figuring it was probably bad. If you're getting in with somebody that good, that quickly, it probably isn't the best thing. So my appointment with him was the complete opposite of what I had at Jefferson. So I saw him and right away he said, yep, you're a perfect candidate for surgery. if you do not have the surgery, you're just going to continue to get worse. With this condition, they talk about when your tonsils are going down into this, base of your skull, they press up against your spinal cord and your brainstem. So when that happens, everything just gets tight, and then your spinal fluid can't flow the way that it should. And then all of your other limbs and things are all affected because everything's being pushed in. So I said, do you need like another test to see if my flow is blocked? And he's like, I don't even need a test to tell that your flow is blocked. I know that it's blocked just by looking at your MRI. And I had some work issues with time off from when they were trying to find all the cardiac issues. So I said, can I wait 6 months to get this done? So that way all of my short-term disability is back in play. And he's like, no, absolutely not. You can't wait that long. So it went from being like to like kind of like a scary appointment of like, wow, no, it's bad enough that I'm not comfortable with you waiting. Like, this is something that you need to have done, and you need to have it done now, as opposed to somebody telling me, no, nothing's coming from this. So it was a very interesting journey. Luckily, I think my journey was a lot shorter than some others. And I think that I just was very lucky to have Dr. Friedlander. Granted, he's far away in Pittsburgh, but I'd rather, travel and do what I need to do to see one of the best people. And I'm just thankful that with him, everything moved so quickly, and I could still be, if I didn't reach out to him, I don't know what would be happening right now. I don't know how bad things would have gotten or continued to have gotten if I didn't find him. So definitely very thankful I did. And yeah, it's just, I have no trust in our medical professionals now. So
I was going to say, what if you just listened to that first doctor and went home and just like, okay, well, I'm just going to have to manage my symptoms and live with them. But the fact that you advocated for yourself and he saw that it was a little bit of an emergency for you to get the surgery, like, thank goodness you were your own advocate.
Yeah. And I think that's what I've learned is that with medical professionals today, not that I think any of them are out to not help people. I just think that unless you are just this clear-cut textbook, like, this is what I've learned, yes or no, like you can just check boxes. If you are more of a complicated kind of medical case, it's just like they don't want to take the time to dig deeper or look further, or even say like, listen, this isn't my expertise. I don't feel comfortable making that call, like something like that. But to basically flat out say it, and to say it with such like, no, like
definitive. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I left there in tears and just thinking to myself, like, and I did let it go for months and months and months. And, who knows what could have happened if I just said, okay, I'm now stuck with this for the rest of my life. And this is what's going to happen. Because at that point you do feel defeated. You feel like you're going to give up because you don't have anything left in you to fight at that point. So, I think luckily for those Facebook forums, those people have a lot of fight, and they tell you fighting, and they get very angry. So I think, it definitely helps when you have people that definitely know what you're going through and are like, no, like, you need to fight for yourself. You need to stand up for yourself, and you need to get this, taken care of, because it's not something that you hear about every day. And I'd never heard of it until I had to deal with it. So
yeah. That's such a crazy story. I feel like, who was it? Was it Kelly Clarkson who wrote that song? Who's like, because of you, kind of feel? And it's like, instead of being a bad boyfriend, it's like, because of you, I found Angel Flight East.
Yeah.
How did you find us now?
So the funny thing is, I found you guys from watching a podcast of yours. That
I think it was Christy.
It was Christy. Yep. So Christy shared your podcast.
Christy.
So
yeah,
I'm actually going to go
best.
to dinner with Christy on Friday. So I'm very excited because I get to meet her in person. But I've talked to her on the phone just with her helping me with all this. But she's a very, very close friend to one of my close friends. So that close friend's mother-in-law posted Christy's video that she had linked to your podcast. And I was like, oh, let me let me watch this. So just one morning at work, I watched the podcast all the way through, and I call Lori and I say, can you get a hold of Christy and ask her? I'm like, would they be able to fly me to Pittsburgh? And I was talking to Christy within minutes, and she's like, they absolutely would. Oh my God, they're the best. Blah, blah, blah. You know, so then it was from there, it was then talking to David and getting everything done. And it was the easiest, most seamless thing I've ever encountered in my life.
I love it.
Yeah,
That's
so
amazing.
this
How
is
are
another
your
reason, Jess, why I was like, I will absolutely do the podcast, because this was the absolute reason how I found you guys. So I would do anything to help you, to help other people.
Yeah, that's what we always say. Unfortunately, we find that so many people have no idea we exist. So just sharing our story on social media or the podcast just makes such a difference because we're a pretty small staff and we cover 14 states. So to be everywhere we cover all the time is pretty much impossible. So having people out there just sharing our story is so incredibly helpful to us.
Yeah, definitely. That is exactly why I was like, yep, I will do it.
How were
So
your
how-
flights with us? Oh, sorry, Maddie.
No, you're good.
Who wants to go?
Yeah.
You can answer Jess first. How are your flights?
The flights were all good. I mean, very seamless and easy. There was a little panic on the day before surgery, or no, it was 2 days before surgery, because I had to fly into Pittsburgh the day before my pre-op appointment. So they did all my pre-op the day before. So I was flying in, I think on a Wednesday, or no, Tuesday. Pre-op was Wednesday, surgery was Thursday. So that morning, Earl calls and he's like, I can't fly because of the weather. I'm like, oh no. I was like, oh crap. And this was like, we're getting ready to walk out the door. I'm just like, oh crap. I'm like, that was my biggest fear. It was not like driving to Pittsburgh wasn't my biggest fear. It was then like, oh no, like driving home after this major brain surgery, like how am I going to survive? So David, luckily, calls me like right after I get off the phone with Earl, and he's like, I'm on the way to the office. I'm in the car. I'll be there in like 30 minutes. He's like, and I'm gonna do everything I can to get you another pilot. So I was like, okay. I said, John, just let's just get ready. There's no way he's gonna find a pilot on such short notice. No. David calls, I think within like 3 minutes of being at work, and he's like, I've got you another pilot. And I was like, oh my goodness. So that was our very first experience. So I mean, like John and I always joke about David. Like, he's like a miracle worker. I don't know what he does behind the scenes, but it's just like instantaneously, he's like, yep, I got you one. Yep, no problem. I got you one. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's just been the easiest. The flights have been the easiest. The pilots have all been so sweet and amazing and just lovely. And I couldn't ask for, a better experience. Like, luckily I'm not claustrophobic. I'm not afraid of small spaces. I'm not afraid of, things like that. So the flights all were pretty smooth and pretty easy. And on my way home from Pittsburgh after surgery, we flew with Earl. So he did tell us, he goes, I'm scheduled to also take you back. So he was still able to bring us back. So we did fly with Earl on the way home. And it was easy. I mean, tiny little bit of turbulence, but he was flying us at a certain height to make sure that it was like the least possible. I think the pilots were more nervous about flying me than I was about flying, just with it being a brain thing. I think they were so concerned. And I'm like, no, the doctor said it's fine. We checked again with them. When we left the hospital, they said, yep, no worries, it's fine. But I think they were all so concerned with like pressure in the head and the turbulence. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. He saved the good meds for the plane ride. So we're good.
That is insane. I would really hope that I would have that good of spirits after brain surgery, but like I cannot say that I would. But at the same time, like, how many times would you ever think to be in that situation?
Yeah.
Never.
Never.
Because how common of an issue is this?
I honestly think it's more common than people think it is. I mean, it's funny because I can't remember who I was talking to, because that's one of the issues is I literally feel like I have early onset dementia. The memory is so bad. My cognitive ability is so bad now. I just hope that comes back after surgery. So I was talking to somebody about it. And as I was telling them about it, they knew exactly what I was talking about because they said a friend's son had it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then my cousin's husband had surgery in New York. So I was like, okay, is this something that's more common? Is it not? I mean, you see the amount of people on these Facebook posts and these boards and these forums, and it seems like a lot of people are going through it. And I think the sad part is so many people have the same exact situation that I had, where they go to a neurosurgeon and they're completely dismissed. And they have all of these symptoms that I had. Some of them have even more symptoms, some have less, some have different, but they have the same types of issues. So I think it's more common. I just don't think that there's a lot of people getting the help that they need for it, is what my gut is telling me. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I know like Dr. Friedlander, who I see, again, he's one of the best, and he sees people from all over the country. And, you know, he does surgery twice a week, and he always seems to have his 6 people a week to operate on. So
True. Yeah. I feel like when you put it like that, that's like, oh yeah, I guess that is pretty common then. Because
right.
6 a week for 52 weeks, that's a really big number.
Yeah.
We're not good at math here.
No,
I think it's like 300 and something.
Yeah.
I'm not good at math either. And since this whole thing, I'm really not good at math. So numbers are not my thing anymore.
I either really just embarrassed myself or just impressed myself, but I think it's 312. But that's still a ton of people, 312 people. And if there's 3 tops in the country, which is Wisconsin, New York, and Pittsburgh, that's at least 900 people if they're all doing 6 a week.
And then, and then believe me, then there are so many more, because I see all of these people on these forums that do talk about getting the surgery, and they talk about other doctors. So it's got to be way more common. I just think it's one of those things that is not really talked about. And I think it's just one of those weird unknown things. And I think it's one of those things that people suffer with these things, and people can't figure out what it is. And no one's ordering these brain MRIs when you're coming in with some of these symptoms. They're not thinking that there's an issue with the brain. So I think people are just going, probably not diagnosed.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you come in talking about your elevated heart rate. My thoughts would be nowhere near your brain.
Exactly. So that's the thing. Like, we have to hope now that that these are all related. And a lot of people do have that elevated heart rate with the Chiari malformation. But like the one cardiologist I did see at UPMC said, and even my Dr. Friedlander said, there's no guarantee that the heart is going to get fixed because of it. It could be its own separate issue. And there's just no way of knowing that until after we do the surgery. It's like the severe headaches, the really bad pain in the back of the head, the neck pain, and the shoulder pain, which is what disappeared instantly after surgery. And they also expect like your numbness and tingling to like kind of like disappear instantly after surgery. And those pretty much have gone. Like, I was shocked waking up from surgery, and to that constant pain that you lived with for months and months and months, that was just always there, to be just completely gone, was like shocking. And the shoulder and the neck pain, which they were all just so thinking it was like my degenerative stuff, and you're just getting older and falling apart. No, literally just went away. So I was like, even if none of the other symptoms go away, it was well worth it to get rid of that constant horrible pressure pain in the back of my head. So I was like, hey, I'll deal with my heart meds. They do a pretty good job of regulating my heart rate, but it's just figuring out like what is, what's connected, what's not connected potentially. And then is there more stuff going on? Who knows? That could be a medical mystery. We just don't know.
So will you have to continue follow-up appointments in Pittsburgh, or will you be able to be treated locally now?
So I will have to go back to him and to, so part of Dr. Friedlander's research is really connecting those memory issues and the Chiari. So before I had my surgery, I met with a neuropsychologist who did all of these memory tests. I was with them for like 3 hours. So I did all of these memory tests so that they have a baseline. And then when I go back in 6 months, I'll get a follow-up MRI for Dr. Friedlander to see where everything's at. And then I will also meet with the neuropsych again to hopefully see an improvement in my memory and cognitive ability. So, yeah, so I will be going back then. I had some really bad, had a really, really bad incision site infection. So I ended up having to go to Pittsburgh more than I should have after, surgery. I was supposed to go back to get my stitches out, and I was only supposed to be there for one night. And, you know, we had a flight scheduled for that right after that appointment. I was supposed to be able to go home. Well, I get to that appointment. He's like, well, your stitches are not coming out. You're really infected. And you need to stay an extra 2 days because I want to make sure that nothing doesn't get worse. So I was like, oh, great. So then that totally screwed up our flight. Luckily, I had the pilot. I texted him to say, you know, when do you need to leave? Because I'm going to be at this appointment and I'll let you know if I can't fly home. And so luckily I caught him before he flew out. But then because of that, we then ran into weather issues. And then we had to end up driving home from that appointment. And it was graduation weekend, Mother's Day weekend. So there were no one-way rentals. So we had to rent a car, drive
Oh my
back.
goodness.
And then we had to drive it back for the follow-up appointment to get the stitches out after I was on the antibiotic. So, and then we were supposed to fly home from that. And we knew we weren't when we woke up because we knew the weather was going to be horrible. And David called and he's like, yeah, I don't think we're going to get you one. So he's like, how much time do you need? I said, it doesn't matter. So then he called me in a couple hours, was like, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to get that. I was like, don't worry. I said, hopefully we'll get a one-way rental. And luckily there were no graduations happening. So we were able to get a one-way rental, thank God, and didn't have to drive back to Pittsburgh. So it's the thing, you always got to have your backup. And that's one thing that you guys say, gotta have your backup.
Well, that's why so I started as a flight coordinator and it's so crazy. But
I can't imagine.
just like going through the like checklist of, okay, what are our options? Amtrak, Greyhounds, like you think of it, we probably tried it before. It's wild. And
Yeah.
then people's like differences are so funny too, because I'm a millennial. We're both millennials. Um, and we rented a car for somebody, and she was like, well, did you get me a GPS with it? And we're like, no.
Don't you just use your phone for
Right.
that?
I'm just like, just use your phone. And she's like, how am I going to use my phone and drive? And I was like, you plug it in. The car talks to you. Like, what do you mean? Oh my gosh. I'll never forget that one. I was like, oh,
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. No, it was like, it started to get like worrisome that morning. I was like, are we not gonna be able to get back? My husband's calling like all the rental car places and they're like, no. My husband's like, how can we not get a one-way rental? What do you mean there's no one-way rentals? Like, what are you talking about? But we had no idea they held them all back during like holidays and graduation. So it was like two big things going on at one time where they were like not letting anything go. So when we had the weather incident that next time, we luckily were able to just keep the same car we had, just drive it back and leave it here because the one-way thing was like restricted, but then it was let go because there was no holiday or graduation that time, thank God. Because I was like, I don't want to drive back to Pittsburgh for no reason.
Yeah, I've actually never heard about that. You just think you rent it from one spot and drop it off at the company where you live.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had no clue that that was even going to be a potential issue. So luckily it happened when we had to go back. But I was like, John, what if it happens this time? He's like, I don't know. He goes, I already checked flights. We can't fly out today. I was like,
Yeah.
buses, trains, what else? What else can we do? I don't even know. But that
Yeah.
pilot that we had was so like, he was so sweet. He's like, I'll buy you commercial tickets. I'm like, you will absolutely not do that. I'm like, no. We will
Yeah.
figure it out on our own. Don't you worry. So, but that's the thing. These pilots are all just been so, so, so nice. And they're just the sweetest, sweetest people. So that's the only thing I was sad I never got to meet the ones I've talked to where we had to cancel the flights because they were so nice.
Well, the more you fly, I'm sure they'll come back because they feel the same way. They're always like, oh, I missed flying her last time. Let me pick it up now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And one of them was I think the last one we were supposed to take, he was based out of Pittsburgh. So he's like, my home airport's only like 10-minute flight. He goes, I'll literally be up and down and I'll be there. So he was from out that way. And then another guy that we missed, I think, was in Lancaster. He was the one I think that was supposed to come pick us up that first time originally. But
I
Also,
wonder if it was John Greco.
That's what I was just thinking.
So this one
Especially
part,
when she
yeah,
said the "I'll buy you the ticket."
it was John.
yeah. I bet
Yeah.
it, yeah. He's one of our favorites. He refers to Maddie and I as his adopted daughters.
Aw.
So every time he flies in the wings, we have to give him a hard time. But he's just the best, and he's always going above and beyond for patients. And if he can't fly them, he's like, "I'll just buy the ticket. It's no big deal. It's
Yeah.
probably cheaper than me flying them."
I'm like absolutely not.
Honestly, yeah.
So that was the thing. Like, and it's because it's not like I'm, like it's the whole thing with us. It's not like, oh my God, we're in dire need. It was the fear and anxiety that I had of driving home, 5 hours, but then it would have been God knows how long, because the PA was like, if you're driving home after this surgery, you have to stop every single hour to get out and walk so that you prevent blood clots. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm just going to have brain surgery. I have to get into a car for 5 hours, which now is then going to turn into what, a 7-hour drive? Like that was my biggest fear. I was like, oh my God, if they can fly me, that would just be so much of like, because then it's like what, an hour and a half then, instead of being stuck somewhere for hours and hours and hours and worried about the pain and everything else. So it wasn't like, I'm in dire need where I'm like, yes, buy me ticket. No. I'm just flying because I'm absolutely petrified of having to be in a car with brain surgery. Like that was, I think that fear, before I found out about you guys, that fear and anxiety of that drive home had me like, just like up in arms. I was so worried about what that was going to be like. And plus you just don't know how you're physically going to feel after brain surgery. And
Yeah.
that was a surprising thing, because he told me it would be 1 night in the hospital. And I'm like, brain surgery?
Just one?
One
Yeah.
night in the hospital? I'm like, are you sure about that? Because I'm reading all of these things on, the Facebook groups where people are like, I'm in ICU for 2 nights and then I'm in a regular room for 3 nights. And I'm like, and he's telling me I'm going home after 1? I'm like, doesn't sound right to me. But it was 1 night in the hospital. And then we spent the next, I don't know, 4 or 5 days in a hotel because they wanted you local just in case anything, happened. But yeah, he does some pain regimen that makes it so that, you just can kind of like get up and out quicker than normal other people, I guess. And it worked. Because even my husband was like, when I got out of the surgery, he went out to the nurse in the hallway, and because like you saw how, I was in bad shape when I got out and from recovery to the room. I couldn't even get out of the bed. And he's like, be honest with me, is she really going to get out of here tomorrow? And she was like, you're going to be very surprised at the difference that when you walk in tomorrow morning of what she's going to be like as what she is now. You will be very surprised. And it was for him. He was like shocked when he walked in, and I was kind of sitting there like, hey, everything's good.
Yeah. Ready to leave now.
Ready to go home. It was very, very crazy, but thankful that it wasn't, the biggest complication was the dealing with this infection afterwards. So
Yeah, the biggest problem of my brain surgery was that's insane. But what is a final thing that you want to leave our listeners with?
Just that you guys are all absolutely amazing. Like I said, I can't be more thankful for David and all the magic and strings that he pulled behind the scenes as a flight coordinator. And just that, I'm just so thankful for all the pilots. You guys are amazing. And to tell anybody to not hesitate to reach out if they need, if they need a flight for something, because it seriously was the easiest thing, and there was nothing complicated about it. And it really did ease my mind and make me feel so much better and, and comfortable. So I feel like if people can, medical stuff is hard enough to deal with. And when you have all this other stress from, how you're going to get somewhere or how you're going to get home. And that's the stress that you don't need, because you need to kind of focus on what's going on medically. Like something like this can just take that extra added stress away, like take advantage of it. And I know people probably felt like I did and Christy did. And it's like, you feel guilty doing this and you don't want to. But when you do talk to the pilots, you see that they're all amazing and sweet. And they really are doing this because they want to help as well. And, and I think that it's just, people are scared to ask for help, and people are scared to say, this would be amazing for me. And I just think people need to realize that no, you guys all want to help. They all want to help. It's an amazing organization, and I hope more and more people reach out. I know my doctor says, ooh, we need to get some information and work with them. So
Yeah, no, we definitely do. But thank you so much for telling your story. This is awesome.
absolutely. Thanks for having me, and thanks.
Yeah, thank you so
I
much.
was done.
I don't know if we said this yet, but every time somebody talks about how great David is, do they know that he admitted that he loved us? And we're all very close friends, because now we have to publicly say that because we have it in a text message that
We
is not
do.
photoshopped.
Yeah, David keeps telling everybody that we photoshopped it, but we did not. David outwardly and unpromptedly told us that he loves us. He used the L word. But also, anytime anybody talks about David, I'm like, I feel like I take on such like a mom role where I'm like, my baby's growing up.
I know, but then I'm like, who are you talking about? Because our David is not that professional, and he's definitely not compassionate with us. He's a little
No,
mean to us. I'm like, is
no.
he nice?
I mean, he brings us donuts, which like that's very nice.
He does. Which, every time he brings us something though, I'm like, what did you do? Do we have to clean up your mess again?
Well, not even again. I feel like he hasn't done anything that bad. I feel like I just get nervous. People
Yeah.
should start being nice to us more so then we don't get nervous when people are actually nice.
Yeah, because then when people are nice, I'm like, "Ugh, what do they want from us? They're gonna ask
Yeah.
for a big favor, and they only brought us a donut because they know that we'll remember the donut and be like, well, they did bring us a donut, so I guess we can help them.
No, we really need to get like bigger asks or something. Like,
I
sorry,
thought you
I
said
don't.
something.
No, I was going to say like a big bottle of wine.
Yeah. Quit giving us donuts. We'll take the wine instead, happily. Although
Each.
nobody has seen our freezer, which is
I don't-
still filled with airplane mini bottles, and that was from the gala a month ago.
I got stressed, okay? I
That was
couldn't
a,
decide on a flavor for us.
that was a trying time in all of our lives.
It's not a bad decision. For anybody curious, go the mini bottle route because then you don't have to decide on just a bottle.
But don't choose bad flavors. Choose Fireball and
Ugh.
less Pink Whitney and suntan lotion tasting liqueur.
Oh, I like the suntan lotion.
Well, thank you everybody for listening to us again. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope your favorite part was not us talking at the end. I hope it was Erika explaining her journey with us.
Yeah, seriously. Also, I just realized that we told her to share this episode with her doctor, and here we are talking about liquor that tastes like suntan lotion.
Hopefully they have a call before this ends and don't come back to it.
Well,
They're
at least
busy,
they know who we
okay?
are as real people. But, oh man. All right.
Okay, well, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
That's it for today's episode of Takeoff Talk with Angel Flight East. If you want to learn more about our services, please visit our website at www.angelflighteast.org or call our office at 215-358-1900. Join us in our mission. If you're a healthcare worker or a patient in need of air travel and flight services, AFE is here for you. Subscribe to the show so you can hear more stories. Join us again next week right here on Takeoff Talk.